World War I is almost over. The British Army is winning, and Henry Tandey, the most decorated British private in the entire war, has a German soldier in his sights. The man is wounded, limping, he has no weapon left. Tandey watches him. He lowers the rifle. He lets him go. That German soldier's name is Adolf Hitler. This is the story every historian knows, but this is not the story we are telling. In this version, Tandey does not lower the rifle. By the time this story ends, 60 million people are alive who should have been dead. A continent that burned does not burn. And one man, a soldier who did everything right, sits in a chair in England in 1938 and stares at a photograph. The photograph shows a painting. The painting shows a German soldier. We will get to that photograph, but first, you need to understand what Tandey was when he pulled the trigger. Henry Tandey wants one thing. He wants to survive this war without becoming a coward. He has been under fire since 1914. He has dragged men off open ground while bullets went through his coat. He has fought hand to hand in trenches too narrow to raise a rifle. He wins the Victoria Cross, the Distinguished Conduct Medal, the Military Medal. He is the most decorated private in the British Army. But here is what no one sees. Henry Tandey has a line. He does not shoot men who cannot shoot back. He has never said this out loud. He does not explain it. It is just something he does, something he has always done. And he does it on September 28th, 1918, when a wounded German soldier limps across his sights. He lowers the rifle, but in this version of the world, his finger tightens instead. Now, here is what no one asks. Everyone knows Tandey let Hitler go, but no one asks what happens the moment the bullet leaves the barrel. No one asks what Europe looks like if that one man, wounded, limping, going home to paint watercolors and write a book no one reads. No one asks what the world looks like if he never comes back. The answer is not simple. The answer is not clean, and it starts not with Germany, but with the one man who is waiting for exactly this kind of gap. Hitler dies in France in 1918, a corporal, a nobody, a footnote in a regiment's casualty list. The Weimar Republic still falls apart. The Great Depression still hits Germany like a hammer. The anger is still there. The humiliation of losing the war, the hunger, the unemployment, all of it still real. But a movement without its center does not stand still. It finds a new one. Gregor Strasser takes the Nazi Party in 1923. He is smart. He is organized. He does not believe in the racial obsession the way Hitler did. He wants power. He wants Germany fed and strong. Therefore, the party grows. But it grows differently. More political, less like a religion. No rallies built around one man's voice. No single figure the crowds worship like a god. Strasser takes power in 1933. Not through fire and theatre, through votes and deals. He wins because Germany is desperate and he is the only organized force left standing. But he is not Hitler. Therefore, the Jews of Germany face hard laws, restrictions on where they work, where they live. Families leave, thousands go, but the camps are not built. The trains do not run to Auschwitz, because Auschwitz does not exist, because the mind that needed Auschwitz to exist is buried in a French field. Before we get to what happens next, drop in the comments. Do you think any version of Germany in the 1930s avoids war? Or does it always find a way? I respond every single one. And if this is the kind of story that keeps you up at night, you know what to do. On Thrones and Ashes, we go deeper every week. Here is the thing everyone misses when they say, what if Hitler never existed? They assume Europe gets peaceful. It does not. Therefore, the biggest story in Europe in the 1930s, the one history hides behind Hitler, steps forward. His name is Joseph Stalin. And without Hitler to point at, without a monster so loud and so visible that the Western powers spend a decade watching him, Stalin has no shadow to hide in. Every historian who studies this period says the same thing. Hitler and Stalin needed each other. Hitler gave the Western powers something to rally against, something so obvious, so loud, so theatrical, that they spent the entire 1930s watching him, and not watching the East. But without Hitler, there is no distraction. Therefore, by 1937, Britain and France are not watching Germany with dread. They are watching the Soviet Union with dread, because Stalin's purges are not a secret. The mass killings in Ukraine, 3 million dead in a famine Stalin caused, the show trials, the labor camps running from one end of Siberia to the other, all of it in the newspapers. But with Hitler alive, those reports get buried under the Nazi question. Without Hitler, they do not. Therefore, Britain and France make a different choice in 1938. Not how do we stop Germany, but how do we stop the Soviets from moving west before Germany gets strong enough to stop them for us? The chess of the late 1930s plays out on a completely different board. And that is the version every documentary tells, the obvious version. But there is something none of them say, something that changes what this entire story actually means. Strasser's Germany becomes a partner, reluctant, conditional, watched closely, but a partner against the Soviet threat. No Second World War breaks out in 1939. There is no September 1st, no invasion of Poland, because Strasser does not want Poland. He wants trade and a seat at the table. But the Soviet Union is not standing still. Therefore, 1941 does not look like history remembers it. There is no invasion of Russia. Instead, there is a slow, grinding standoff. 15 years before anyone invents the phrase Cold War, with Stalin pushing west through threat and influence, and Britain, France, and Germany pushing back. The 6 million Jews of Europe are not murdered. They are scattered, displaced, many in poverty, but alive. Anne Frank grows up in Amsterdam. She becomes a teacher. She writes about her childhood in a small diary her grandchildren find after she dies. At 91, the atomic bomb is not built in 1945. The Manhattan Project was driven by fear. The fear that Hitler's Germany was building one first. Without Hitler, that fear does not exist. The science is there. But the panic, the specific named terror that sends a letter from Einstein to Roosevelt in 1939 is not. Therefore, the atomic age is delayed, maybe a decade, maybe more. The Cold War still comes. Human beings do not change because one man dies in a French field, but it comes slower, quieter, without the ruins of a world war to start from. Therefore, more of the world survives into it, more cities, more people, more time. In the real world, the world where Tandey lowered his rifle, something terrible happened in 1938. Hitler, by then the leader of Germany, saw a painting in a Munich art gallery, a British war painting from 1914, showing a soldier carrying a wounded German off the battlefield. Hitler recognized the soldier's face. He tracked Tandey down through diplomatic channels. He called the hotel where Neville Chamberlain was staying during the Munich talks. He asked Chamberlain to pass on a message. He wanted to thank the man who had let him live. Chamberlain called Tandey. Tandey stood in a phone booth and listened to Chamberlain tell him what Hitler had said. He did not speak for a long time after the call ended. He walked home. He sat in the chair. He picked up the painting, a postcard copy Hitler had sent him, and he stared at it. He said later that if he had known what that man would do, he would have shot him without hesitation. But he also said something else, something no one quotes as often. He said, "But how could I have known?" In this version of the world, the bullet leaves the barrel, and 60 million people live. And a man named Henry Tandey goes home to England after the war, grows old, tells his grandchildren stories about France, and never once wonders if he made the right call. He never has to. He never gets that phone call. He never stares at that photograph. He never has to answer the question. But we do. The question is not, was Hitler's death worth 60 million lives? The answer to that is obvious. The question is, how does a man live? A good man, a brave man, a man who had never once been a coward. How does he live with the knowledge that the most merciful thing he ever did became the worst thing that ever happened to the world? That is the question Henry Tandey never stopped carrying. That is the question this world, the world where Tandey pulls the trigger, never has to ask. And that is the only version of the story where Henry Tandey gets to sleep. Henry Tandey spared one life. That life killed 60 million people. And Tandey spent the rest of his days staring at a photograph, unable to decide if he was a hero or the worst mistake God ever made.